If you had free reign, is there anything you would change about Supercross? Could be format, could be scheduled, anything.
Man, you put me on the spot here because sometimes behind the scenes, you know, we always think of stuff and this and that. It's not popping in my head right now, but I mean, overall, you know, it's a lot of races. I think as a whole, we'll see how long that goes good for. But I mean, granted, we've had a lot of races for a long, long time. But obviously, there's keeps more races being added and stuff. So I think that we were probably, you know, besides like baseball and stuff like that, they play a lot. But for how hard our sport is, I think in general, it's quite a few races. You know, I think more off weekends would be great. Maybe more frequently, I think, rather than, you know, doing a shit ton of races and then one off weekend and then you go again for another 12 rounds. So it's just very demanding, right? And then you come to motocross and it gets hot and stuff like that. So it's yeah, it's a tough one. At the top of my mind, you know, I enjoy the racing side of things, and especially now with the stadiums being, I think, fuller than ever. I think every stadium that we have gone to have been a lot of fans. So you know, tough blocks is always a discussion. They can definitely bite you, but overall, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. I think as a whole, more off weekends would probably be better, not just for the racers, but you know, there's drivers and mechanics on the road constantly, and I think it can weigh pretty heavy on families and just being gone so much. But instead, there's always more races being added. So
it's a very hard question. I think for me, one of the things I would change would be the consistency of once a rule's a rule, it's staying that way. One of the things that's been, you know, some people like it, some people don't, but this whole heat race debacle, you know, I think, and the 9 whoops and just the stuff like that, I think whatever the rule is at the beginning of the season is what we should stick with. So that would be my thing, just a little bit of consistency.
When you say heat race debacle, you mean the schedule? Sometimes you guys go first, sometimes you don't?
Yeah, exactly. You know, sometimes we go first, track's brand new. I haven't ridden a track like that since my 250 days. And then some weekends we're not. So I think just that, a little bit of consistency. I think like this weekend, there was gates that we started on from last year. That was a little bit weird. And then, yeah, just little stuff like that. But, I mean, overall, they do a great job.
Yeah, I would like to see if we could do it somehow just a little bit longer of an off season. I feel like it's just so quick as far as getting a little bit of a break, but you're right back into testing for the next Supercross season or whatever. So I feel like just a little bit longer of a break, whether if that's a couple less races.
How spread the day is, in a sense. Maybe like just see, again, it's like it's super hard for me to, because I don't really have a way of fixing it, or if it's even really a problem. But I think that it's pretty spread out, the amount of practices and how long like the athletes are actually at the track.
Sure.
We're free practice, we're at usually 11 o'clock in the morning, and the 450 main doesn't get over till 10 p.m. That's a long time. As a rider, sometimes I'm struggling to go find a sit-down breakfast because I'm so worried about getting to the track for track walking. But the first time I even go on track is noon. But again, that's me thinking of it in what's best for me, Cameron McAdoo, as a person.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
There's so many moving parts, and I don't really have the answers to it. So it's another thing I don't really feel like I have. I should really be able to say, oh, it needs to be like this.
Didn't like the big break. Like, I wish we could race a little more, like back to back.
I want a Supercross. I just want one round per year, nothing but whoops. You can have a finish line, one finish line, and then nothing but whoops. All the lanes whoops. And you got to do it at somewhere like Glendale, where the floor is really big. Or imagine Daytona, nothing but sand whoops.
Just go do the Wild Boar GNCC. It's 13 miles of sand whoops.
I mean, that would be fun too. I don't know. I don't really like the number rules. Like, maybe 250 Supercross shouldn't count for getting a number.
Okay.
I don't know. I've been close to a career number once, and it really hurt my feelings that I didn't get it.
Too many options, actually. So to change one thing, I don't know. Honestly, though, I think they've been doing a a good job. I mean, I think the main thing you would need is reinvesting a little more back into the rider, the team, which seems like that's what they've done with the SMX. I think is the biggest thing. But other than that, I just think that dude, the sport is in such a good spot right now. Like the room for growth, I feel like is just out of this world. From a promotional standpoint and from a get this to a bigger audience and bigger stage standpoint, I think that we could still improve there. Because, dude, this is incredible. Anybody that watches this, I think, is like, holy shit, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, you know? And especially with how competitive the field has been this year, I feel like we could be at another upper echelon level. So that's probably the one thing I would say. How to do that, I'm not the guy to answer that. But I just think that's where it could go.
I'd like to get to more stadiums. And when I say that is like instead of having like A1, A2, I don't even know if they had like A3 this year or whatever.
Year.
But I feel like there's more stadiums out there that we could make it work.
Closed stadiums would be nice.
Yeah, more closed stadiums so we don't have to deal with what we're dealing with this weekend. Because riders, we don't necessarily care about the rain. I mean, I don't. I'm okay with the ride in the mud. But it does take a toll when it comes to having to wash the bikes for the mechanics, and it ends up costing more money for the teams.
Unsung heroes.
Yeah, like they're the ones that make our motorcycles look all pretty, and like the fans love them. And then you leave it to somebody like me, and I'll go out there and I'll just trash it. And I'm doing it with a smile because I love riding my motorcycle.
And you don't have to clean it.
Yeah, I don't have to clean it, but at the same time, it's like, dang, that's a lot of money just out the door. So I think, yeah, get the more stadiums and get the more closed ones for sure.
I guess more pay would be nice. That's yeah.
I think Supercross is pretty freaking cool. I love Supercross. It's why I'm here. Everyone loves it. I think this year, and I understand why they've done it, but it seems to me like they've definitely cut down the whoops a lot this year, and no Dragon's backs. But for years and years and years, watching Ricky, watching Bubba, watching McGrath, even Dungey, Villapoto, every great champion that's been in the last few years. Yeah, Marty, the whoops and the Dragon's backs are Supercross. Yes, they are dangerous. They deserve a lot of respect. But for me, that is like, when you're a European and you want to come to America, the whoops are scary. You're like, oh, I don't know if I can do Supercross because of the whoops. Everyone can jump the jumps pretty much, once you can get the rhythm sections down. But the whoops are like a separator, and I think that's like a hold your breath moment for the rider and also for the fans. Whereas if the whoops are easy or they just turn into jumpers, the racing just, it may be closer, but everyone's just kind of riding around at the same speed. So the overall might be closer, but not a lot really happens. Whereas passes, like I remember watching Pastrana, watching Davey, Millsaps, and it was like, oh my God, if he's close to him in the whoops, he's gonna get him, and it's like, wow. Whereas if the whoops now become kind of just not boring, but like the same, then that kind of, I don't know, that to me is something that I've noticed just from this year. But again, I also understand there was a lot of big crashes last year, and sometimes the whoops can be too gnarly. Maybe somewhere in the middle. Some tracks with big gnarly whoops, some tracks without. I don't know. Maybe.